Good morning, everyone. Welcome you on a bright Sunday morning. I'm right now sitting in Noida in my home. So I'm staying home and staying safe. Hope you are doing the same. I am Ravi Gupta. I am the CEO and founder of Elets Technomedia Private Limited. And we have been bringing out a magazine called eGov magazine for last 16 years. We have been focusing on various areas of governance and how ICT can help improve governance in a more citizen-centric manner. We also have been publishing a magazine called eHealth for last 16 years and a digital learning magazine for last 16 years and a magazine on banking and finance for last 7 years. And today on this webinar, we are joined by an eminent expert in urban affairs, Shri Hitesh Vaidya ji. He is the director of National Institute of Urban Affairs. And National Institute of Urban Affairs is a leading think tank and research organization in the urban sector in this country. And it has been there for decades now. And it works closely under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And we are going to discuss about various challenges which the COVID-19 situation is providing in the urban sector and how we need to respond from a urban sector specialist perspective. So welcome Hitesh ji. Thanks for joining us on this Sunday.
Thank you, Ravi ji, and thank you for calling me and engaging with me for this, bringing me in this platform. It's a great platform you have established, and thanks for being. I will try to share some of my thoughts, even though I know that it's too early a stage to even have some thoughts, but I'll try my best to see what I see from urban perspective.
So just to provide a background that why Elets is like doing this type of a webinar, having been bringing out a magazine like eGov magazine for past 16 years, and in fact our next issue is like supposed to be the 200th issue of eGov magazine. We have been dealing with a lot of urban sector issues in our magazine, in our portals and our conferences. So we have gone to nearly more than 50 states of the 50 cities in this country and organized urban innovation conferences, smart city conferences, urban development conferences, green city conferences, and organized around 100 conferences like this in urban sector. And we have realized that urban sector is a very complex sector, and it is getting more complex every day due to a lot of density of population, inequality of incomes, lot of pressure on the urban areas because of the population, migrant population, economic issues, and several other issues, infrastructure and several other issues, water, transport, hygiene. These are several issues. And in this situation, the corona is a great massive like disaster to happen in a health perspective. We are seeing already what's happening in New York right now. It has become a what do you call a massive numbers we are seeing in terms of deaths. We are seeing Mumbai right now because of the urban density, Ravi situation. Delhi is also like emerged as a corona hotspot. So we are like seeing that urban areas are emerging hotspots in this situation, and that is why this dialogue on urban sector in terms of corona virus is very, very important, and that is the backdrop of why we are having this conversation. So Hitesh, before we like get into the depth of the COVID-19 situation, I will request you to give a brief background of the NIUA itself, so that many of our audience who are not as much involved in the urban research, urban think tank sector are aware that what is the role NIUA has played over the decades and what is the vision of NIUA? Hitesh.
Thank you. And thank you all the participants. I am Hitesh Vaidya, Director NIUA. I have, I'm just 6 to 8 months old in NIUA. I was a country representative to UN Habitat in India, and now joined this National Institute of Urban Affairs 6 months back. NIUA was established in 1978. And why I say this was that NIUA and UN Habitat, from where I come from, both of them are in the field for last 42 years. And what I see NIUA as a UN Habitat of India, because the four things which NIUA is doing, which UN Habitat does it for its member states, is we also develop standards and urban management. We develop evidence-based tools and guidelines. We come up with the advocacy and knowledge sharing. We also position India as story at the national and international level. And we help in handhold and capacity building to urban or local bodies. So all these four areas, which UN organization says that they are doing serving 192 states. For me, my 27 states are 27 countries. So I am actually being the aggregator of urban knowledge, and that's my vision also, to become an NIUA as a aggregator of urban knowledge and cater to the demands and needs of urban ecosystem, both at the center, state, and local level.
Perfect. So I think it's hats off to our visionaries in the Indian government who established NIUA such a long back, around 40 years back. And I think like NIUA has done several research projects all over the country in several cities and worked with the government of India extensively so that it has the right knowledge and the capacity to think about and speak about the urban sector situations. So Hitesh, my first question to you is that we have been like talking about smart cities for last 5 years, 6 years in this country in a more focused way. And a lot of cities have developed several capabilities, implemented several projects over the last 5-6 years in this gamut of smart city under the ministry. So how do you see that that these projects have panned out, and how are these projects relevant in these times of COVID-19? Hitesh.
Yeah. See, this is a very unprecedented situation, and it has disrupted lives both at urban level as well as rural level across the country. It has disrupted lives, and it's difficult to at this moment, saying that our cities were less prepared or they need to be more prepared. I think that this is not a right, very fair at this moment time, because no one in the world was prepared enough to deal with the crisis of such a magnitude. But we also have to realize that this is not the only time that we have a COVID-19. This time we might have COVID-19 now, and we will have another type of a crisis like earthquake, flooding, weather conditions at the later stage. So there will be as much as you can prepare yourself, you can minimize the impact through better preparedness. And I think we should really compliment and commend our urban local bodies, which have really come up very fast with a lot of out-of-box solutions, with a lot of new thinking. And if I have to say that, during this COVID-19, the way I was telling the other day, 3 years back, when the integrated command and control centers were established, people were talking about that these are just another white elephants which government is creating, and not. But these same integrated centers has now come up as a rescue for our, or a savior for our COVID-19. And the way these integrated centers have been performing last 2 weeks, which is like they are not only disseminating the right information, they are also setting up COVID-19 war rooms. We are also having a different types of apps like a COVID Kashi app or a Varanasi app, which is facilitating the movement of traffic and other things. We are also tracking the corona cases through their GIS tools and others. We have our CCTV cameras are monitoring the real-time information. So if you see that huge number of initiatives across cities have come up during this period. You know, but uh, and we have to give a credit to our local bodies because even though they are right now following the instructions or advisories from the government, both center and state, they on their own have taken up a lot of these initiatives, and I think they need a real big hand from all of us, because while we are sitting at our homes, our frontline workers are still struggling at the streets and trying to sanitize the areas and other things. So, but I think we need to, you know, tomorrow or day after, when the pandemic will move, we will go back to the schools. Schools will reopen, restaurants will reopen, theaters and sports will open. We will be back on the streets, and that's the question which all of us has to be decided. And I don't know at this moment any of us have answers to that. Is that, do we go with the business as usual approach, or we change? And I think this is the time when just a reactive efforts has to be is appreciated, but they have to move away from this reactive efforts to really take the bull by its horn and start thinking about structural reforms. And these structural reforms will be making a way forward for our thinking, because, you know, I can give you 3 solutions, but there is no cookie cutter solution at this moment of time.
Agree. I think your point you have made is very valid, that the smart city project was not well received by some of the community, and some they're always like thinking this is just another IT gimmick. And but as you rightly said, that the infrastructure which has got prepared in last 5 years because of the smart city project is being very well used in this situation. In fact, just to like support what you said, and last week we had 3 webinars like this. One with the Agra commissioner, we had another webinar with the Chandigarh commissioner, and we had another webinar with the Thane Smart City CEO. And all these webinars, these officers like were doing from the war rooms. They had set up the command centers, and they were actually talking about the infrastructure which has been built in the smart cities and how they are utilizing. And as you mentioned about, they have created apps. They are using IT big time, and the preparations of the smart city have been highly used. So, as an expert, your views are very important. Than that, the the preparations of the last 5 years have been really useful in handling this situation. Hiteshi, my the next question is that how do you think that what are the lessons for the urban sector uh, from this COVID-19 situation, and how do we choose these lessons in the new policies which are getting created in the urban uh, sector, urban development? So if you can throw some light on that.
Yeah, see, one of the things which we need to really think about is from this preparedness, which you talked about your earlier question also, is how do we build the capacities of urban local bodies to prevent, to detect, and respond to this situation. And if you look at all these 3, if I have to do a preventing, I have to detect, and I have to respond, then I have to create action plans. And to create the action plans, I need to have a staff. And to have a staff to implement it, I need to have finances. And this goes back to my always thinking, and I've been thinking about it for quite some time, that we had 74th Amendment, which gives a power to urban local bodies, which talked about transferring of functions, transferring of functionaries, and transferring of finances. And I think, again, when I think the structural reforms, this is the time we have to revisit these structural reforms. And we have, if we really want the cities to really react and be ready to look at not only COVID, but also the future pandemics or future crisis, which they will be thinking of. So I think the first thing is, how do we really change the institutional structures which we are going through for last, now it is 25 to 30 years of 74 months. Maybe it has not worked. Maybe it's a time to go to a drawing board and see why it didn't work. What were the issues? So those things have to be thought about. And we also, I think one will be, one thing which I have really felt that next time when we will be, or moving onwards, the cities will not be judged how productive cities are, how better investments they are bringing to the city, how are their economic strengths, or how beautiful public spaces or heritage spaces they have. They will be now judged on the thing how responsive they are. And that's another challenge. How do we make our cities more responsive towards the citizens? And I think that's another round which we need to start thinking about. If you see that slowly the discourse is now shifting. Earlier discourse from when the COVID really came was health, hygiene, washing our hands, and now it has started going to urban planning issues, institutional issues. So we need to start thinking that move away from the public. We start developing our discourse and our thinking of how urban planning can help, or urban institution, urban local bodies can help manage this type of pandemics. Because ultimately, you will agree with me, the action, whatever center may say, state may say, the action will lie at the local level. And unless we prepare and strengthen the capacities at the local level to manage this thing, we will be only, this will be, if there is no devolution, then it will be just reactive approaches towards the crisis. And so I think the biggest challenge which will be how we can start thinking of leveraging local systems, leveraging local services to manage these disasters in future. And we have to also start looking at mechanisms to how we can intermingle the strategies with the local knowledge. And that is going to be the key for the future planning initiatives in India. There are a lot of thoughts which are coming up, which are, and you must be also hearing, all of us, that social distancing will become a norm. Work from home will become a norm. I think these are too early a day to really start thinking, because we all agree we are a human race, and we always call from the generation onwards that human is a social animal. We need to interact. You cannot be sitting from home and working on it. We need to have, so we have to accept that there might be a changes because of this, but they will not be a norm. The norm will be, we might get a romanticized right now, saying that I can hear the birds outside, but end of the day, when you go out to the street and you don't see a person walking on the road, you start feeling scared inside. So I think move away from that romanticism to really reality of life. And that's where I think the planning has to start thinking about new principles and make it more positive and make it more safeguards to be done in the planning process rather than just leaving things like that.
Hitesh, very important points you have mentioned, and I want to just get into the details there because many of our viewers are non-urban experts, and but now is a time when they need to learn a bit more about it. So you have mentioned about more functional autonomy, more reforms, more the constitutional amendment being implemented, capacity building at the local level, proactive approach than active approach, more local approach than central approach. So if you can highlight the past 2 decades, what discussions have happened, what uh, government organizations have done, and what are the challenges in bringing the auto. If you can like elaborate a bit more, so that audience is a bit more educated on these issues. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, See, before I answer your challenges, I will again reiterate that it will be very short-sighted for us to think that COVID-19 pandemic is the only time cities will be faced with the crisis of this
Yes.
magnitude.
Yes.
So I think that has to be taken very, very
Yes.
clearly that we will be
Yes.
going through that. And for each pandemic, uh, there will be a different kind. It will have a crisis of its own. And But with this, I think normal days will definitely outnumber the pandemic days we are living at this moment of time. And uh, but I think what you are saying, the two things which definitely brings I'll bring on thing. The pandemic has brought the focus on spatial planning. So we start looking at neighborhood level interventions rather than city level interventions. So we have to start going back to the wards level or a neighborhood level to start thinking about planning process. It has also have brought it the integration of planning with the sectoral planning issues. So that has to be linked with each other. And third thing, it has talked about the need for data and need for information at the local level. I think these three things, if we can, because there cannot be one size which will fit all of this. Each one has to be decided by the local context. And has to be designed and planned for the local at the local level. So we need to really, looking at this situation, we need to, if you look at again back to my, maybe I'm for the general audience, which we say that 74th Amendment, when it came, it talked about three functions, which was given to a local bodies who were supposed to transfer out of the 12th schedule, which transferred the function. And one was urban planning. Second was socio-economic conditions of the local body at the city level. And third was local economic development plans. And I think these three functions have to start coming up, because what we are seeing now is whole informal sector, whole communities migrating. So unless we start looking at integrating social protection, local economic development strategies, and integrating technology to really identify people who are meeting what type of, and linking that technology with the spatial planning. I think these three things, if we can really manage moving forward, I think that would be a small, I don't want to talk about big steps, but I think the minimum 3 steps, if we can start, that would be a great way forward.
Hitesh, you said again and again that COVID-19 is not the last disaster we will see in our lifetimes. There will be many more. And so, what is needed is preparedness, disaster preparedness at the local level.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you about that. And you somewhere mentioned about earthquake or floods and stuff like that also as a disaster. So, at the local level, at the municipal level, how is India preparing any disaster management plans, and are their health disaster management plans also being prepared? Have they been earlier prepared? Are there case studies for that in India or outside India? Are there lessons to learn from other countries on disaster preparedness at the local level? As you said that we will have to actually go to the ward level, neighborhood level, and look at the issues and do the spatial planning. So, what is the situation in these areas of disaster management plans at local level? How much has been done? What is still to be done?
No, I definitely feel that each urban local body has to come up, and that it has become a much more now required to have a disaster management plan than it was earlier. So we definitely know there are disaster management or resilience plans, but I think that these disaster has to plans have to now start looking at interdisciplinarity or holistic approaches rather than just into silos and looking at, somebody looking at only flooding, somebody looking at earthquakes, but it has to be as a ward level holistic, looking at different social, physical, economical aspects, and they have to come up with all those aspects while preparing a disaster management plan, and they have to be integrated within the planning process of the cities.
And uh, something you have mentioned earlier in your talk was about how responsive is a city, how resilient is the city. And one of the responsiveness tracking is through IT. IT is a great enabler for responding in these situations. So how you see that urban local bodies need to improve their IT preparedness and usage of IT in handling disasters or response to citizens and delivering services to citizens. In fact, like right now, the situation is that the municipal authorities or the local authorities are also in like many parts of India delivering rations to people, delivering vegetables to people, providing lunch and dinner in the urban areas to the poor. So suddenly urban bodies are doing many tasks which they hadn't even thought about earlier, right? Around a month back. So is there a need to look at preparing a comprehensive framework so that these plans and these strategies are ready with every urban local body or a municipal authority to handle a similar situation again whenever it happens? And how does it start planning to build it IT hardware and IT software strategy to deal with any possible situation in the future? Hitesh.
Yeah, I think, the benefits of technology we all have said, and that's a reality now. The benefits of technology is real. It's not, earlier the technology was looked as something which are just hampering, or there was always a thought when even I was part of the smart city mission that it's been run by the technology operators. But now we are seeing the benefits of technology, and I think in this isolation time when we are working from home or working from it has brought us much closer than in reality we were, and it has made the communication so easy between people and also faster. So I think that no doubt about the technology being a great enabler. I think it has really bridged the gap between the digital divide gap within the urban local bodies, and particularly when it comes to the sharing of information. Definitely. And as you very rightly mentioned, that it has played a great role in COVID situation in different ways. As I told you earlier, 24/7 war rooms to really finding out who are the people affected, how they can, and so it has very easy and great responsive system which we have developed in such a fast way. I think if I would say that in India, the way we are flattening the curve, I think the technology has played a big role into the flattening this curve. And the similar examples, if you can see the way technology is playing, is South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore. And they have also used a similar technology as a responsive system to mitigate this risk. So I think the only thing which I feel is that this has also demonstrated that citizens require a trusted channels, because there's a lot of misinformation which is going on. So you need a trusted channels, and how you and channels and platforms, and how you can build them at an urban local body level where they can, they can not only express their opinions or needs, but also get the authentic information. Mm, and as well, everybody wants to contribute. So there can be a technology can even bring a platform where people can start contributing towards the bigger cause. And I think the technology has that potential to bring that thing. So, looking at uh, uh, we need to definitely moving forward. I think the one area which we need to really establish is create a protocols for a citizen-centric governance systems. And unless we start looking at citizen-centric governance systems where they can communicate with urban local bodies, as well as get right communication from urban local bodies, both ways, we need to really build on those new areas moving forward. Three things which four things which we have looked at during this 15-20 days is the lot of information gathering. We have received a lot of information, but now moving forward, how we are going to use this information for our future benefit. I think that should be and how it can be regularly updated. I think that's a area. Then how we disseminate this information, what type of a credible systems and information platforms which we will create to disseminate those information, so people know what it is for them and how they can integrate with that. Then it has also helped us monitoring and reporting of the cases, and also how we can build on those mechanisms, so we can now start looking at not only the situation, but overall cities growth, and its productivity can be monitored and reported, and so we can start benchmarking city with other cities and also. So that can be another area. And last, which I think has this technology has brought out, which is capacitate the networks and create a partnerships. So how technology can fill that gap of capacitating the networks, and also building a new partnerships, improving the coordination among the different stakeholders. And particularly in this case, when we saw the police, sanitation workers, health workers, they all were coordinated based on the data which was collected, and I think that created a we all talk about convergence, and that's the convergence which technology can bring. And I think we need to continue to capitalize the potential of this tool and use it, because in 2018 McKinsey had done a study, and it has found that just by smart city applications, they could reduce the green gas house emissions of around 15%. They could reduce the water consumption by 30%. They can reduce recycled waste by 20%. So if that's the potential, we can use the technology. We should really use that potential.
Hitesh, I will go back in the time for some time. When we started Elets, and I used to meet you around 16 years back and discuss with you regarding our conferences on our special issues of a magazine, and ask you and take your inputs about which are topics we should be focusing, which are the good experts we should invite to write and stuff like that. So you have been in this sector of urban sector for last 2 decades now. And how do you see that this sector has evolved over 2 decades in this country? What are the things, what are the areas where you have seen a lot of improvements? What are the areas where the improvements are okay level, and what are the areas where we have to still improve a lot? So if you can give a bit of a 2 decade historical perspective from your experience in-depth experience in this area, it will be really enlightening for our viewers.
I think this is a very big question and very big ask, Raviji. But
still, like I say,
I think see, urban is an evolving process. You cannot have a one solution and it can have. So we have, I think, 20 years. I will say we have progressed quite far. We have done, I think we have done much better than even a lot of developed countries have done. And we have much more good practices to share and to demonstrate. The unfortunate thing, and I must have, admit that unfortunate thing is that India somehow has not been able to create a story of its interventions. One of the, I have been in the UN organization and looking at different things. I've seen that small, the India's complexity and scale is totally different than the Western country. So, when we start comparing ourselves to a Western world and seeing India has not done, I think that's very harsh on us ourselves. So let's the complexity, the challenges, the scale which we have is totally different than any other local. I think the areas where so the challenges are enormous, and I can't say that we know the challenges range from the waste management to water sanitation to mobility to others. But I think the one area where we definitely need to work is institutional governance systems within our local bodies. Because if 25 years have or 28 years have gone by and we have not been able to look at 74th Constitution Amendment, and come back to that same discourse, is that we have to go back to the drawing board and see why it didn't work. What was the reason? And because the world has moved in 25 years, maybe that was not a right thinking now. So we maybe go back to think, is this the same model we want to do, or we want to change the new model? I think that's where when I was talking about structural reforms, is this look at different alternative models. If that model did not work, what is the other models available on the table? So we need to really study all these models and see which one can fit within the Indian context better. It cannot be just cut, copy, paste model, and we can get it rolled out in India. We have to think it what fits within our context. And I think that's the moving forward. We need to really work much more uh, 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 strongly. And as a National Urban Institute, which we call ourselves as a think tank, I think it's our duty now to really start looking at these areas and start deliberating with the different with different experts and consultations, and think on what type of urban or city governance system we want. I think that's area. So what because cities are complex ecosystem. There is a transport system, there is a parking system, there is a street designing system. And how do you really work on these different systems and create a system thinking is a big challenge which we all have to deal with. I don't have an answers to some of them. And looking at last 15 days or 1 month of this COVID, so many other issues are coming up. Now people are talking about, is a smart city good or a safer city? So we have to start talking about what is the best alternative. What is it, a right path or not right path? There is going to be a competing demands on public health versus climate change. Because if we talk about social distancing, then are we talking about urban sprawl, or we are talking about mixed use? So that's another area. We will be also talking about higher density is good or crowding is. How do we move higher density versus crowding? Whatever our thoughts are. Then how is the relationship between the density and livability? Those are and secondly, like as I told you, are we all ready as a society to pay the price to see the blue color? That's a question we all have to ask ourselves. What price we are ready to pay to see the blue color sky? you know there cannot be an answer to any of this. So we have to look at all these questions. And I think as an institute and a think tank, we have to start deliberating and debating and come up with answers. There cannot be, again I said, there cannot be cookie cutter solution. If this is the right or this is wrong, we have to discuss, collectively agree what we want, and take the journey forward.
Uh, You mentioned about will we like to have more safer cities. You also mentioned about the cities will be evaluated not in terms of economics, but is it like healthier? So each municipal corporation has a health division, has a public health division, and they have been like there for ages, for decades. Do you think that after COVID-19, the role of the health division inside a municipal corporation or a urban local body will increase from here to here, like the focus will uh, right now in the urban area, the focus is on building good roads, flyovers, bridges, metros. So the focus is on hardware, like hard stuff. Health is a software. It's like a soft issue. So do you see that there will be a shift from infrastructure to the soft stuff like health? Yeah.
It's not a question of because of COVID or because of not COVID. I think we need to start thinking about that cities are for people, and it's the people who make cities. And also, so I was yesterday gone out to buy a medicine. I don't want to live in this ghost city where there is no people. There are good flyovers, there are good streets, there are empty streets, there are street like everything there, but there's no people. Do you want to stay in that city? So unless we start thinking and focusing, bringing people-centric approaches to our cities, and I think if people-centric approaches have to be the only solution. And I don't know whether health departments should come into urban local bodies or urban local bodies. That's a policy issues, and I'm not a right person to think. But definitely, I think the empowered urban local body. I'm saying I'm saying that start looking at city as a spatial structure, starts looking at city as a spatial entity, and the entity which manages this urban local body which manages this spatial structure need to be empowered. So whatever happens within the city has to be done via urban local body should be responsible for all of that, and that's the way role we should be, there, because otherwise buck will not stop anywhere. So if we are on to talk, everybody can go on saying that it was center, it was state, it was this policy and that policy. Unless we start getting our roles and responsibilities very, very clear, and give the empower these urban local bodies with the these functions, I think we will not be learning any lessons from this. Give you an example. When I'm saying empowering these urban local bodies, and I'm just saying, let's see now this local sanitary measures, a doorstep distribution, which you talked about, basis household provisioning, including medicine and all. List of schools and community halls, which could have been converted into a temporary hospitals. Monitoring and feedback, modifying responses, reaching out to wide range of experts. All of this should have been local body functions, and local bodies should have been doing this function. Even though, said and done, there are cities which are doing it, but still there is no institutional response that local bodies are responsible for this. These are all happening because there are advisories from the center, advisories from the state, and cities are doing. But city action planning, which you talked about earlier, and cities start looking at it, how I prepare myself, I think that's a missing. And that's where we need to start moving on forward.
Now I'm going to ask you a very different questions, I think, which you might not be prepared for that. So it is out of syllabus question.
Yeah, you asked a lot of out of syllabus questions.
So yeah. I'm going to ask you about there are has urban planning and urban planners been given enough importance in the country as a whole? In the sense that the role of urban planners in running a city is it recognized enough? Is that importance recognized enough? Some where I have like so I am ignorant about this because I haven't studied urban planning. I am like as a citizen, I live in a city, and like sometimes I like see around it, and I just think about it. Ki when they were planning this city, like I'm not like living in a city which was 500-year old or 1,000-year old, and uh, urban planning as a concept perhaps had not existed, so people were not aware of what whatever. So I am like living in a city which was perhaps planned or designed 2 decades back or 3 decades back, when India had urban planning institutions already. It had urban planners in the country, and like sometimes when I see the city, and Chandigarh was anyway there, like it had got planned and it was operational. The same architect had also planned Bhubaneswar, nice city, sprawling city with a lot of green areas, parks, like everything so well organized. And so many cities have in the outskirts of each metro, there are cities or sub cities which have emerged, which are unplanned or not as well planned as, like if I had to take Chandigarh or Bhubaneswar as an example. So uh, uh, why are we like repeating the mistakes? Like why aren't we uh, learning from the good urban planning case studies globally, and uh, putting them in our city planning and city management framework? What is it stopping us, Hitesh?
Yeah, again, uh, there are, this is again a very large question to answer. I will just say that, over a period of our independence, now 70 years, the planning profession as such has reduced, and we have not been able to appreciate the role of a planner within the city thing. So what we have we are looking at city again, as you said earlier, is looking at uh, uh, different systems. So we are looking at water systems, we are looking at transport systems, we are looking at a parking system or a street system. But the role of planner is to weave around all these systems and create system of systems. And that role has not been, unfortunately, has gone down. It has been taken up by the, I must not say, but it has been taken up by engineers, by professional, by management things, and planner role has reduced. And I think for that, again, we need to really strengthen the role of planning, because if you look at it, this question which you are asking in some other form was asked by my son, who is a class 11 student. What is that planner do, and what are you do? So my answer to him, when you go to or get up in early in the morning, and then you go to a washroom, you open a tap, the water comes. You use for your daily use the flush, and water goes. So everything is planned. So somebody is sitting there and planning what happens, and that's the role of planner. And we need to start bringing that role of planner back into the forefront. Unfortunately, if you look at the ratio of planner versus citizens across the big cities and in India, there are only one or two planners per city or per lakh population and all those things. So I think that those are areas where we need to invest much more. We need to start thinking much more related what type of planning profession we want to really move. And I think that there cannot be uh, uh, you know there's no argument on this, that we definitely need to strengthen this planning profession.
I said that I was like sitting in a smart cities conference of ours. We had organized a conference, and we had like 3 4 senior urban secretaries on the panel. And there was a discussion which like suddenly one speaker said that except Chandigarh, there is no other city in this country where you don't have huge amount of traffic, huge amount of jobs, jam, huge amount of like, you feel like it's all mismanaged. So it's just struck me, and like whenever I go to Chandigarh, I'll always like see that here is a real life example of a living city right now in India. Why cannot all of us who are like developing new cities or planning new zones or wards can visit here, have a look, study the history, and like try to learn from it. So it's like so simple. But so I think sorry to like have diverted this, but I think as we all are talking about, as you are saying that we need to build the capacity at the local level, we need local reforms in the at the local level. It again needs professional who will like implement those things at the local level. And I want to touch upon another stuff also. What is the situation of urban planning education in this country? So, how are we prepared as a country to generate enough professionals who are like there in the ecosystem who can help the government to do that? So, if you can enlighten, and I am like putting in this context of that you have been the head of your habitat in this country. So, you must have also seen that what is the system of urban ecosystem education in other countries. So how is India uh, uh, strong or weak in urban planning education itself? So if you can highlight that.
Yeah, see, just to get it correct, and I think one of the chat, my colleague, Mr. R. Srinivas has corrected me right now, so I'll just get it. I said there is one per 83,000 urban population, one planner per 83,000 population in town planner in India. So just get corrected on that front. And no, definitely, see, when I'm talking about structural reforms and giving the powers to the urban local bodies and bringing planning profession at the forefront, all these are part of a structural reform. Who really manages our city? Who really decides about our city? Who really plans about our city? We need to start looking at those, granular issues and start talking about them upfront and discussing about them, because what the figure is, one per 83,000 population, one planner. Uh, how do you manage cities without this profession is a big challenge. So city planning is not preparing a master plan, but it has to move away from the master plan to a strategic planning and action planning, and at the neighborhood level planning, spatial planning. So if all of these things which we talk about and require uh, municipal professionals, so that's one thing. Second question of yours on the curriculum, you see, some of these topics, whether it's a climate change, whether it was air pollution, whether it is resilience, they were not there 20, 30 years back when we studied our planning. So, but our curriculum has not changed. We're still looking at those old curriculums. So I think there's a huge need with the new challenges, even a pandemic like COVID. You know, how cities manage? So we need to go back to our curriculums at the local level and start looking at it. How we need to start. And second thing, which I always think, people don't want to come to urban local bodies. How do we make this profession of interest that people start coming and finding interest and challenging to work in urban local bodies? That's why they don't see this. They get into a planning degree and they will go to a research firm or a consulting firm or a thing, but working in urban local bodies, getting that exposure. I think some of the states, Odisha has just recently started a municipal cadre system. Gujarat has done a lot of work on that. Madhya Pradesh has started working on it, and we start working on it so that people start doing that. This is also a profession which they have not as yet realized. So that's another area where we need to really invest and start working on it. So there are a number of areas, but I think because of the time, I don't want to get into
Yes.
all of that. But
Of course.
in a nutshell, what I will just summarize what I have been saying for last half an hour is, uh, the COVID has given us four or five things, and I think that's an area where we need to really work on. One is harness the power of citizens. how we can engage with the citizens much more, uh, 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 much better way. Second is how we empower our urban local bodies, uh, uh, to do, and then move away from the settlement neighborhood-based approaches to manage this type of challenges which are coming up. Um, and as you had also talked about, clear and uniform communication systems, and use of technology to have a great data base or data systems within urban local bodies. I think these are the 4 or 5 things, but overall we need to have a much more established city level coordination mechanisms. And I think COVID has shown that we could manage that type of a thing. So how, whatever learning we have through COVID, how we can really institutionalize this, I think those are the areas where I think we should be moving forward.
So, thanks, Hitesh. I think if you can look at the Q&A button in your screen, there are some questions which audience has. So, if you can select some of the relevant questions which you would like to address.
Yeah, I think one area which has been talked about, integrated city regional planning around economies, transport networks. I think definitely, see, as I'm saying, these are good areas. We need to really work on it. How we can really make much. We saw people migrating to rural areas. We have to start looking at city not as in isolation, but city as an overall regional framework, and it's a city and its hinterlands, and how we can really make it much more better. I think that these are areas where we need to really invest and start thinking about it. We again, I said there was a discussion happening whether we need to go back to the public transport, or do we need to go with the some of the cities now are talking about walkways or e-rickshaws or e-scooters, single mobility options. So some of our philosophies or our approaches which were there, we need to question them and see which works, which does not work. And unless we start questioning that, those principles, those approaches which we have been propagating for last 70 years, we will have, this is the opportunity now to go back to the drawing table and see what will be actually workable and what will not be workable. If we want cities to work as start looking at informal settlements, they have to be given a power to look at on the local economic development issues. They have to start thinking about how social protection issues, how do we can provide it. So these are some of the areas where we need to really grapple ourselves, our thoughts, brainstorm ourselves within our systems, have a lot of this expert group discussions on those, and come up with the strategies to move forward, and impact of this COVID-19 in our future planning and our planning processes. I think next uh, uh, couple of months, or by end of this year, we should be very clear how do we want to go about it. And I think National Institute of Urban Affairs, being a think tank, should take a, when I am calling it, we need to take a structural reform bull by its own, and NIUA also has to take a bull by its own and start deep diving into some of these thoughts and some of these areas, and work on it.
Any other question you want to look at?
I think the other area is has to be that I think there was a soon, I think, tackling the issue of C19 by cities, COVID-19 by cities, in collaboration with the Department of Health, which you, I think, has already talked about. Definitely, there has to be integrated approaches. There cannot be in a silo approach to any of the things which we have been talking about. So we need to really work on those. It's easy to talk about convergence. It's easy to talk about integration, but these are not easy. What you call easy answers to all of them. And these answers to some of these questions have to be worked out. It has to be through discussion, through deliberation, and work it out on more case to case basis. But I think all these points which some of the question is how to make cities less crowded. even China, they have a register where you need to register who are the people who are coming outside the city and all. We don't have that type of information. Uh, do we want that information? Do we want to restrict those movements? There's no, how can we restrict the movement? So and when you say that making less crowded, do we want to go back to the sprawl, or you want to have a mixed use planning? These are two areas where we need to really think about things. But I think the main issue will be how we engage more and more and communicate more and more with the citizens, so that they become a partner in our planning process. I think that's the area where we need to really think. And this uh, 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 COVID gives us opportunity to work on those areas. I think that's where we should. And I particularly feel that it has to be. There's no easy solution for any of them. We have to work collectively to understand the needs of citizens, creating a value chain, both bottom up and top down. And um, I think we have to continuously assess and review the evolving situation and see how we can really respond quickly to those challenges. And definitely, as somebody has said, a resilience. The definition of resilience itself has to expand, because right now when we were talking about resilience, we only talk about floods, we only talk about earthquakes, but now we have a health issue that has to also come into resilience. We also have to talk about financial resilience of the cities. There cannot be only physical, also financial. We also have to talk about social resilience of people who are living in the cities. So these are the new areas where we all have to start thinking, and how we take it forward as a country. We need to work on those areas.
So, any other point from questions or chats? If you want to
No, I
comment
think
about.
I think over a period of discussion, I think and your out of syllabus questions, I think we have covered quite a bit. And I just again reiterate that COVID is not the last thing, and we will definitely get out of the COVID, and the challenge will be, once we get out of the COVID, how do we want to really build our society, build our institutions, to really say tomorrow when some other pandemic or other crisis comes, our cities are much better prepared, and also have a strengths where they start responding to those challenges at their own level.
Excellent inputs, Hitesh. I think you have given a proper, I think, context to the whole urban crisis situation which we are seeing here right now. You have talked about the institutional reforms. You have talked about policy reforms. You have talked about lot of breaking of silos. You have talked about local level governance reforms and strategies. So I think we have covered a lot of points. We also have talked about resilience, which is a very important topic, but perhaps health was not as much given attention in that resilience discourse. So we want to really thank you, Hitesh Ji from Elets, for doing this webinar. And before we sign off, I will request Hitesh Ji to just give a message to our team, Elets team. We have been working on these areas of e-governance and urban ecosystem knowledge dissemination, conferences, workshops, online portals. So, your impressions about our work and any suggestions for us, Hitesh?
No, thank you, Raviji. And I think it was excellent interacting with your team. I think you people are doing excellent work. and bringing some of these challenges. And I'm seeing you are doing a number of webinars and number of this expert group discussions last couple of days. And I think this is the right time which we need to start looking at our structural and reforms which we really want to take forward. And it gives us a time to rethink, reassess, and revisit some of our approaches, principles, and bring them to a drawing table and question ourselves and introspect. And I think you are facilitating that discussion. I think that's a very, very great, each one of or each sector or each individual who is a professional who has to introspect whether he is adding a value to the whole discourse. And I think that's why you are really creating a great effort and facilitating that dialogue to happen. And I think I know you, and I have seen the organization grow for last 25 years, and I think you have really been contributed to the whole changing discourse of urban narrative within the country, particularly role of IT, bringing a citizen-centric governance systems and all those things. So, disseminating them, peer-to-peer learning, and I think that's an excellent job. And I wish you and all your team a great success. And as an NIUA, we will be much more than happy to really learn and create this. One of the role which I did talk about is advocacy. Bringing, for me, an urban local body is not only a center or a state, but 4,400 local bodies are a constituents of NIUA. And how we can really bring this new knowledge, new practices, new areas in collaboration with you to those 4,000 will be a great support if we can work together on this.
Excellent. And I thank all the audience. More than 100 audiences like right now here with us on Zoom, but there are like thousands of others who are watching it from the several handles of Elets on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and I request all the audience to kindly like and share this video, since I think some of the great ideas about the institutional reforms should reach to lot number of people in this country, so that we are aware about the new way of thinking which is needed in the urban sector. So with this, I thank Hitesh ji for sparing time for us on this Sunday morning. So thanks a lot, Hitesh. Namaskar to all of you, all the audience. Namaskar.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you.